Hey, good day, folks. Welcome to another edition of Lumberjack Logic Live. I'm your host, Neil Johnson. Very excited about what I have to share with you today. Pam Bondi dropped a nuke on the American Bar Association yesterday, and it's absolutely glorious. The left's reaction to it is even more glorious, but you need to take this in context of the history of the American Bar Association, what they've done, and what the Trump administration is attempting to do to reclaim the legal profession back to a standard practice of being non-biased in their decisions, non-biased in their recommendations, and stripping power away from organizations that should not even have it, folks. You have to ask the question, the basic question, all this is, where the heck does the American Bar Association get power from anyways? So we're going to get into all of that on today's show, and really looking forward to it. But do me a favor, please do smash that like, chat in with where you're from. Let's get a few more people on the stream. Gerald, I saw you on. Thanks for joining from Pennsylvania. Agent Orange is modding for me this morning. Thank you, Agent Orange from Wisconsin. And got to mention my sponsor really quickly, Birch Gold. Folks, you know how big I am on gold and silver. I was buying it long before I ever had a sponsor because I believe in the product, okay? So all the things the Trump administration is doing, folks, it's still your responsibility to look out for your personal finances. Again, I've covered the fact that, you know, the gold and silver was exempted from tariffs. I've covered the fact of the Rio reset and the fact that gold has increased by in the last 12 months by over 30%. That the central banks are continuing to buy gold in record quantities. So you look where the smart money is going. Look what central banks are doing to shore up themselves against the very currencies they created. It's really fascinating to watch. If you want to get more information on gold and silver, how it can be right for you, whether or not putting that into a long-term IRA or 401k is a good choice, just text Lumberjack to 989-898. Again, that's Lumberjack to 989-898. to get your free info kit on gold and silver, folks. There it is. Oh, here, I'll put this down. Banner covered my face. Anyways, there you go. No obligation, folks, just useful information. I already got a super chat, so I got to throw it up here, and then we'll get into this news. Wanted to be the first to super chat. Well, Gerald, you are. You're the first to super chat this morning, so thanks so much for that. All right, folks, let's get into this news. I almost want to share this Jen Psaki video first before I get into Pam Bondi, just because you got to see it. It's a little bit of a throwback. Jen Psaki's in the news because she had to recant some statements about she said that it was false when Joe Biden checked his watch, but I'm going to hold off on that. First, what I want you to do, remember Ed Martin. We've talked about Ed Martin before, okay? Ed Martin was the one that was supposed to be the district attorney for DC. He was supposed to be the federal attorney for District of Columbia. Very powerful position. That position is the same position that prosecuted all these J6ers. And then Tom Tillis got cold feet in the U.S. Senate. You all remember this. Well, now he's the pardon attorney for Donald Trump. So he actually has a position, and he didn't need Senate confirmation for this. So this was one of Trump's great chess moves. But I want you to watch this because a lot of you have doubts about Pam Bondi. I see this all the time. Mega, Pam Bondi, Dan Bongino, Kash Patel. Folks, watch this. I know a lot of you like Ed Martin. So just listen to what he has to say about Bondi, the Justice Department, and what they're up to. And then you need to see how Pam Bondi just took a big swipe at the American Bar Association yesterday. So we'll start with this.
His first day, he had an executive order saying, get weaponization out of government. When Attorney General Bondi was confirmed, she put a memorandum out on day one saying, I'm starting a weaponization working group. I want you to look at Fannie Willis and Jack Smith and Alvin Bragg. I want you to look at targeting school board parents, Catholics. I want you to look at the whistleblowers who were targeted. Long list, actually, about 8 categories. And then beyond that, we started meeting right away. I was a member of it. And beyond that, actually, was other aspects of things. Like I've worked with Bobby Kennedy on COVID. Did they weaponize? How did they weaponize the COVID stuff?
By the way, folks, do you think they weaponized that? What Ed Martin's talking about here? Do you think they weaponized COVID? I mean, just yes or no in the chat.
Against the citizens. And so there's categories all across government getting to the bottom of, and 3 steps, Alex. One is tell the truth We deserve the truth. We need to know what happened, who did it, and why. If you have to name and shame, we're going to name and shame. Some of these people don't have shame, but we're going to name and shame them. Number two is, where possible, hold them accountable. Criminally, if they lose their jobs, take away their the grants to their universities, whatever it is, make sure that we have accountability. So tell the truth, hold them accountable. And the third thing, Alex, which this made Tillis a little nervous. He's like, "You're for reparations." I said, "I'm not for reparations. I am for restitution. If you put somebody in jail for years, you should have to, and you lied about it, you should have to pay for it, right? If you put somebody through the ringer in a way that is unfair, and it's deemed unfair by telling the truth, holding them accountable, you should fix it, right? This is America. It shouldn't be Strzok and Page got a sweetheart deal to get paid because their texts were shown. That happened. They got $1 million because the Biden administration and Merrick Garland paid them off. This is the ultimate payoff for inside the mob. Well, no, we're talking about people that are truly damaged. If you're damaged, you should be made whole. That's what's at stake with weaponization. And
this is such a big point, folks, because you see this constantly. People commit bad acts in the Democrat Party, and do they get promoted or punished, folks? Promoted or punished in the chat. Yet J6ers unfairly prosecuted under this stupid obstruction of Congress charge that even Ketanji Brown Jackson said was the bridge too far, and they're not supposed to get any restitution.
Going to drive all the way down to the bottom of these things. We're not going to give up. We're not going to hear statute of limitation is run. I don't give a darn. We're going to name and shame. We're going to hold you accountable. And then we're going to say, you know what? You got put in jail. Some of these people rotted in jail for 3 years on January 6th on a lie that Merrick Garland and Lisa Monaco made up. Andrew Weissman created it and tried to use it in the Mueller. And then they used it called the 1512 charge. It was done incorrectly, and a bipartisan Supreme Court threw it out. Ketanji Jackson said, yeah, you got to throw that out. Well, those people that were in jail, as soon as they got that done, they walked because they were on misdemeanors only. That's so wrong and un-American. We've got to get to the bottom of it and make people whole, and we're going to do it.
Okay, so that's Ed Martin. And I think this is so great because Tom Tillis gets cold feet over the fact that he wants restitution for people who lost years of their lives in jail on a trumped up charge, a fake charge, folks. And that's that 1512C3 obstruction of Congress charge. Okay, so look, I'm going to try and get out to Colorado, folks. I can't get out there for the whole thing. My son is graduating from police academy. There's other things going on, but I want to get out there to Colorado and cover some of Mike Lindell's trial out there, because this whole weaponization of the law is something you need to be very concerned about. Now, I was reading yesterday from the Federalist Papers. I talked about, in the Constitution, and I had all these comments. Okay, I got to address this really quickly because I had the best comment on my, and I kind of said this yesterday, but this guy said it much better. Let me go right here. And where is it? Oh, shoot. I probably already transferred it over to my computer. I'll get to it in a second. But talking about the Federalist Papers, I was reading from the Federalist Papers, okay? And we talked about the good behavior clause, which is in the Constitution, but the good behavior itself is identified here in the Federalist Papers. These are companion writings. And Antonin Scalia, I've got a quote from him as a result of this comment. And I'm so glad that you guys provide such great commentary sometimes. In fact, I think I've just found it. Okay, here we go. So this was from James Halloran. He said, Neil, the Federalist Papers and the Anti-Federalist Papers are incorporated in the U.S. Constitution by proxy. The papers were arguments for and against a Federalist Republic after the Declaration of Independence, but before the ratification of the U.S. Constitution. Every word in the Constitution shall be interpreted in context to all of these documents. So again, when you read about good behavior in the Constitution, we talked about this yesterday, and this is Federalist Paper number, wasn't that 78, right? 78, I believe, is judiciary. Okay, yes, here we go. Okay, and I'm just going to read this again really quickly. Just indulge for a second here. According to the plan of the convention, all judges who may be appointed by the United States are to hold their offices during good behavior. Hold their offices during good behavior, meaning that if there isn't good 'it's not during good behavior. Makes sense to everybody here? Okay. which is conformable to the most approved of the state constitutions and among the rest to that of this state. Its propriety having been drawn into question by the adversaries of that plan is no light symptom of the rage for rejection, which disorders their imagination and judgments. The standard, so Hamilton wanted federal courts because he thought people were, because there's this good behavior clause. So the reality is he felt there wasn't a concern. But we're now seeing they're not acting in good behavior, so they need to be removed. Okay. The standard, here it is, the standard of good behavior for the continuance in office of the judicial magistrate is certainly one of the most valuable of the modern improvements in the practice of government. He's saying how important this good behavior is. In a monarchy, it is an excellent barrier to the despotism of the prince. In a republic, it is no less excellent barrier to the encroachment and oppressions of the representative body. And it is the best expedient which can be devised in any government to secure a steady, upright, and impartial administration of law, meaning if they're not impartial, well, folks, guess what? They're not in good behavior. Okay, so hopefully this makes sense to everybody, what I'm trying to cover here. But we've seen a lot of erroneous rulings from the courts, just overreaching on the Article 2 powers of the executive branch, which invests all executive power in a president, right? So now let's go here. Oh, this is that Jen Psaki clip. I almost want to share it, but I'm just going to move on. Okay, I want to show you what Pam Bondi did. Okay, so this was her post. She said, the Justice Department will no longer give the ABA the access they've taken for granted. She wrote this to William R. Bay, the president of the American Bar Association. We're going to go into a history of the bar, where they even get their power. Why does the bar, they're a private organization, yet they have all this power to say whether someone can practice law, whether they can't practice law. And there's a whole history on this we'll get into. But she said, Dear President Bay, for several decades, the American Bar Association has received special treatment and enjoyed special access to judicial nominees. In some administrations, the ABA received notice of nominees before a nomination was announced to the public. Some administrations would even decide whether to nominate an individual based on a rating assigned by the ABA. That's a tremendous amount of power, folks, for an organization that is decidedly leftist, and I will prove it to you here. Again, please smash that like. Let's get this news out. This is important. People need to understand what's going on with the law, and we need to, folks, you can fight your own battles pro se, and oftentimes do better than the representation of an attorney who's just out to collect your money. Okay. Unfortunately, the ABA no longer functions as a fair arbiter of nominees' qualifications, and its ratings invariably and demonstrably favor nominees put forth by Democratic administrations. The ABA's steadfast refusal to fix the bias in its ratings process, despite criticisms from Congress, the administration, and the academy, is disquieting. This is huge, okay? This should have been done 30 years ago. Accordingly, while the ABA is free, this is the best part. Listen to this. Accordingly, while the ABA is free to comment on judicial nominations along with other activist organizations, there's no justification for treating the ABA differently from such other activist organizations, and the Department of Justice will not do so. Specifically, the Office of Legal Policy will no longer direct nominees to provide waivers, allowing the ABA access to non-public information, including bar records. Folks, she has just told the ABA, you have no special access beyond what the public has. Nominees will also not respond to questionnaires prepared by the ABA and will not sit for interviews with the American Bar Association. Sincerely, Pam Bondi, Attorney General. And this gets even better because now I'm going to go to Time Magazine, because you need to see how the left is freaking out about this. This is one of the biggest power moves that we have seen this administration pull off yet. And I don't know that people get how big it is. I know my audience has followed for a long time, and we did some things with state constitutions early on when we were fighting against mandates during COVID. But how many of you just comment in the chat. How many of you understand just how big of a deal this is that Pam Bondi is now taking all this power away from the American Bar Association, folks, which you didn't vote for. You don't vote for the American Bar Association. They're not actually your government. You have no ability to, remove its officers. You have no ability to vote on them. So here we got something. Dave Delgado said, thanks for doing Federalist 78. There is a school in California that still teaches it. Mine, really. Constitution, Anti-Federalist Papers, Federalist Papers, and Bill of Rights. Cool. Folks, this is big. I mean, this goes back to these founding documents, okay? And now, so this is huge. And I'm going to go now to this timepiece because you need to see here. I got to pull this into the stage again. All right. So look at this. Pam Bondi curtails American Bar Association's rule in vetting Trump's judicial nominees. This has the liberal media really upset. The Department of Justice has announced that it will be curtailing the ability of the National Bar of the American Bar Association. I'm sorry, the National Bar Association. There's a National Bar Association as well, folks, which is just for black folks, right? Because we got to have a special organization. We can't just be colorblind and have one organization for everybody. We need to have a special one just for black people. I wonder, do they have a special one for women too? I don't know. Probably. American Bar Association to rate candidates for tenure in the federal judiciary. This will hinder the ABA's ability to vet nominations put forth by President Donald Trump. And then it goes into this, but look at this. Attorney General Pam Bondi said in a letter to the ABA President William Bay on Thursday, May 29th, that's the letter we just read, that she is cutting off the association's access to non-public information about Trump nominees. Bondi referred to the nonpartisan, here's time, listen to this, to the nonpartisan membership organization as an activist group. So they make it very clear. Time is saying that they're nonpartisan, and then they put activist in quotes. But it gets better, folks, because here, I'm going to show you something. This was the American Bar Association's post, okay? And they take a stand in supporting the rule of law. This is from our law school. This is a Reddit post. But here's the post for the ABA. It said, it has been 3 weeks since Inauguration Day. And you tell me in the chat, does this sound like a nonpartisan organization or an extremely partisan organization? Please comment in the chat about that as I read this. It has been 3 weeks since Inauguration Day. Most Americans recognize that newly elected leaders bring change. That is expected. But most Americans also expect that changes will take place in accordance with the rule of law. We hear about the rule of law a lot from the left, folks. We hear about equal application of justice a lot from the left. Yet here we have preemptive pardons for Hunter Biden, for Anthony Fauci, for Adam Schiff, and all these people. Now, is that honoring the rule of law? Okay. Is that being unbiased? Okay. Instead, we see wide-scale affronts to the rule of law itself, such as attacks on constitutionally protected birthright citizenship. Now, this was overused. I'm not going into all this. Okay. We've talked about birthright citizenship before and how that's been abused and misused, and it is not of original intent. The dismantling of USAID and the attempts to criminalize those who support lawful programs to eliminate bias and enhance diversity. Oh, wait, you mean they dismantled USAID where we found all the fraud? And so we're supposed to support fraud now. That's how we're unbiased? What the hell is wrong with this American Bar Association? We have seen attempts at wholesale dismantling of departments and entities created by Congress without seeking the required congressional approval to change the law. Again, folks, these entities are executive agencies, which the executive branch, according to Article 2 powers, has the ability to do all of this. Okay? All executive power is vested in a president. There are efforts to dismiss employees with little regard for the law and protections they merit, and social media announcements that disparage and appear to be motivated by a desire to inflame without any stated factual basis. Folks, again, these are all lies. This is chaotic. This is their new word. It's chaotic. They talk about this with the tariffs, the economic policies that are producing results, folks. We're getting reduced tariffs from other countries. And we're taking in more tariff money. So one of the things that is not factored in to all of these budget estimates is all of the tariff money that's going to be coming in from Donald Trump's efforts, and then how much money is getting repatriated to the United States. Now, I think the total is now 14 or 15 trillion dollars. So when you see these estimates of numbers, it's really hard. So when we talk about the big, beautiful bill, okay, and there's a whole other methodology they're using to get the savings, folks, with rescissions that do not have filibuster. I got to go into that on another stream. There's so much news to cover right now because there's so many changes taking place, but this is important here. Let's see. This is chaotic. It may appeal to a few. Actually, it appeals to the majority. That's why he's now president. But it is wrong, and most Americans recognize it is wrong. It is also contrary to the rule of law. If most Americans recognize that this is so wrong, as the American Bar Association says, then why is this the first time in the history of the country that we now see a majority of Americans, since this polling started, we've never seen this, a majority of Americans now believe the country is on the right track. But the American Bar Association is telling us that it's not on the right track and that this is all wrong. Oh, look, I just got a super chat. I just flipped over to see this. Check this out. Armed in Texas. Thank you, Unky Dunky, for that super chat. $20. That's awesome. Thank you. Okay, so back to this. The American Bar Association supports the rule of law. How many of you believe that the American Bar Association honestly supports the Constitution of the United States? Yes or no in the chat? I mean, I firmly believe they do not. Okay. They support their own idea of the law. They do things under the color of law. This is why what Pam Bondi did is so huge. Okay. That means holding governments, including our own, accountable under law. We stand for legal process that is orderly and fair. We have consistently urged the administrations of both parties to adhere to the rule of law. We stand in that familiar place again today, and we do not stand alone. Our courts stand for the rule of law as well. Now, this is where it gets interesting. They mentioned that the courts stand for the rule of law. Let me ask you a question, folks. Where did most of these judges come from? Where did they get their credentials? Where did they get the recommendations to the administrations? From the American Bar Association. Okay. So this is just a sleight of hand, a play on words. Look at this. Okay. Here you go, folks. Remember diversity, equity, and inclusion? Here we go. Diversity. So this is the American Bar Association's website. Join the fight. Here's the picture they use. Our judicial system, profession, and listen to this one paragraph this is what they lead with. Our judicial system, profession, and the principles we have cherished for 250 years are at risk. The ABA is fighting for the rule of law. We're fighting for the justice system. We're fighting for the legal profession. We're fighting for you. And then they want you to donate. Like the hell am I donate to them? And they go on with all their diversity. Okay. Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Center. Their advocacy and initiatives. Okay. Global programs, human rights. Where's their environmental thing? I'm sure they've got one. You know, it's probably in global programs. Okay. So this is your American Bar Association. So then I'm like, wait now, where do these people even get this power? What really is the American Bar? Well, I'll go to that one in just a second. Oh, and that one. Wait. So here we go. This is an AI overview from DuckDuckGo. These are the results of who gave the bar the ability to tell lawyers they can't practice law or can practice law, folks. So this is interesting. Listen to this. The power to license and regulate the practice of law, including the ability to tell lawyers they can't practice law, generally stems from the highest court of a given jurisdiction, usually the state Supreme Court. But here's how it works. Judicial authority. Courts have the inherent authority to regulate who can practice law within their jurisdiction to ensure the integrity of the legal system and protect the public. Now, unless that's captured, folks, delegation to bar associations. This authority is often delegated to state bar associations or similar bodies like the Board of Law Examiners. These bodies are responsible for setting standards for admission to the bar. This includes evaluating competence and character. Okay, do you guys, I'm going to pull this out for just a second. Do you remember when I covered the story or even if you don't, if you even just heard this story, comment to this. Like, tell me if you've actually heard of this. But they are using a, what do I want to call it? Almost like an AI scrubber. And they've been doing this for some years now, where this, it's a technological tool that law enforcement operations, like Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department is where I saw this first being used, where they're utilizing these tools to go across social media platforms and then assign a threat assessment. So like if you're an officer and you pull up to a house, it might be green, it might be yellow, it might be orange, it might be red, right? So they give it like a color coding. Do you remember this when they started doing this? This was a few years ago. But they did this by scrubbing your social media. Now they would automatically, anybody like you or I, because this is what the Biden Justice Department was doing as well, was if you didn't get jabbed or if you thought that mandates and mass mandates were bad, you were deemed a higher threat. If you supported Trump, you were deemed a higher threat, and so on. This is the American Bar Association. This is basically that. Some people say I don't remember that. Well, this is what they were doing. Okay. So I just got a super chat, so I'm going to throw this up quick. Rule of law is legal speak for the courts are the ultimate power, not an elected president or even Congress. Activist judges are even bucking Congress. That's exactly it, Will. Okay, now here's what our courts are supposed to do, the Supreme Court. They're supposed to say, well, like the Chevron decision would be example of good judgment. But you can see how these decisions are 6-3, 5-4, because we have people are so far off the spectrum, they can't even read the Constitution, which says that Congress shall make the laws. And the only laws that the court is supposed to have judgment over are those that are repugnant to the Constitution, because the Constitution is the highest law of the land. Am I making sense to everybody here? Because this isn't the job of the courts. And I could go back to Federalist Papers number 78 again, but they even say that in here. Let me give you this. It may be truly said, this dealing with the courts, to have neither force nor will, but merely judgment, and must ultimately depend upon the aid of the executive arm, that's the president, Donald Trump, even for the efficacy of its judgments. So all the court can do is make judgments. They do not have force or will. They can't arrest you. They can't do any of this, okay? They're supposed to be the weakest of the three branches because they are unelected. It was important that they serve lifetime appointments because they were supposed to be unbiased. But we are clearly seeing that that's not working now because of the bias of the courts. I was talking to my kids about this just the other day. Do you realize that we used to get confirmations for the Supreme Court, and it was like everybody in the Senate just deferred to the president, and it was like 98-0. You know, two people might have abstained from voting. Do you remember these days? I mean, this used to be how Supreme Court justices were nominated and confirmed. It all went haywire with Clarence Thomas. Do you guys remember this? When they tried to, pubic hair on the Coke can, and I think what was her name, Anita Hill, and they did this, and Clarence Thomas handled himself so well through that. Okay. Anyhow, this is let me see here now. I got to go to look into Roberts and Norm Eisenberg. Okay. Let's see. Now I need to go back here. Okay, I'm going to bring this back in. Setting standards for admission. Okay, competence and character. Enforcing ethical rules. They investigate and discipline lawyers who violate rules of professional conduct. So they're able to enforce these ethical rules. Licensing and registrations. Lawyers must be licensed and in good standing with the state bar to practice law. So we have now delegated to an organization, not elected, private organization, the ability to tell lawyers whether they can practice law or not. We license them. Now, like realtors are licensed in your state through the Department of Commerce. Okay, governmental agencies. I'm not even saying that's necessary or right, but at least it's through an agency that you can kick that executive to the curb. But see, the problem with governance now is we've gone to this whole deep state apparatus. All this licensing crap needs to go away. It's way overdone. I could go on. But here, listen to this. Consequences of not being licensed. And who licenses, folks? Who licenses? See, I remember years ago, I used to have this guy, David Jose, on my streams, and we did an actual affidavit campaign to the state of Minnesota. And he talked about this all the time, the bar, the bar, the bar. This is why I talked about this, because this is just whacked, okay? Okay, now let's go on here. So the bar. A person cannot practice law if they are not licensed to do so in their state or country. Holding yourself out as an attorney before being licensed is typically considered grounds for character and fitness inquiry and can lead to penalties for the unauthorized practice of law. They are protecting their own. That's what this is. Okay. That's what all this licensing leads to. That's why this is this private organization that just has them protecting their own. Okay. They don't want outsiders coming in and showing what idiots they are, quite frankly. Years ago, I wrote a book, and I remember there was a guy who wrote for one of the big newspapers in the cities, and he was so upset because I'd never written a book before, but my book took off. And he's like, what does he know? And I'm like, well, what I know is I went out to all these resorts, I interviewed them all, we took pictures, and I learned about it. I'd learned about the entire resort industry in the state of Minnesota and how it used to be almost 5,000 resorts and then dropped down to now only 800 resorts. Okay, and I could go on, but that was something I had to learn to write the book. Okay, why are these pro se litigants winning cases in Colorado and in Pennsylvania and other places against all these state attorneys? Because they are actually researching and applying the real law. Okay, in essence, the Bar Association is the body that implements and enforces the rules. Its authority ultimately derives from the court's inherent power to regulate the legal profession. So the courts have the power, but then they adjudicate it. They give it over to the Bar Association. Does this seem right to anybody? Just comment on that, yes or no, in the chat. I also want to mention my other sponsor, MyPillow. Michelle just posted the link. You can go check it out, mypillow.com/lumberjack or 1-800-568-2865. Folks, the Giza sheets, $49.98 right now over at MyPillow. Phenomenal deal on Giza sheets. I'll show you real quick, okay? MyPillow Lumberjack. There we go. Why did that not just go to MyPillow Lumberjack? Whatever. Here. This doesn't even have the best deals on it because it's not a lumberjack. I don't know. I'm not going to waste my time, folks. You know, for the Giza sheets, they're the best sheets you'll ever own. The towels, my 3 favorite products: travel pillows, Giza sheets, and towels. But I got a lot of other stuff, man. Down comforters, phenomenal. My son just bought a mattress here in the past year. Loves it. So go over there and support Mike because he's facing lawfare like nobody else. So call the 800 number. That's the best way, 1-800-568-2865. All right. So this is going to the bar. Now I need to go back. So look at this. Comment on Rule 5.5. This from the American Bar Association. Unauthorized practice of law, multi-jurisdictional practice of law. A lawyer may practice law only in a jurisdiction in which the lawyer is authorized to practice. And who determines the jurisdiction they're authorized to practice in? Bar, the state bar exam, okay? The definition of the practice law is established by law and varies from one jurisdiction to another, okay? Where do I want to get to here? There are occasions when a lawyer is admitted to practice in another United States jurisdiction and not disbarred or suspended from practice in any jurisdiction, may provide legal services on a temporary basis in this jurisdiction under circumstances that do not create an unreasonable risk to the interests of the clients, the public, or the courts. They have all of these rules regarding lawyers, and it's all established by the bar. There was one I was going to find on here and go over with you quickly, but here I want to show you this. 2025 federal lawsuit and member targeting by the Trump administration. So this is off Wikipedia, far leftist, right? So listen to this. In 2025, the ABA, as well as some members of the organization, became targets of the Trump administration. On February 11th, with tens of millions of dollars in its USAID and U.S. State Department funding frozen by Executive Order 14169, issued on Trump's first day following re-election, the ABA and other plaintiffs filed a lawsuit which asserts that the administration's actions were arbitrary and capricious violations of the Administrative Procedures Act. Okay, we've since found that's a bunch of crap. The case, Global Health Council versus Trump, was filed in the U.S. District Court of Columbia, of course, because they would go to D.C., because that's where all the liberal activist judges are, and assigned to Judge Amir Ali. And you can remember his erroneous decision. 2 days later, he issued a TRO allowing some foreign assistance programs to resume. Now, why would the Bar Association work so hard? People, this is a big one. I'm going to pull this for a second. Why would the American Bar Association? I got a $50 super chat. I just saw this. What the heck? Holy cats, super sticker. Jim, thank you so much for this. Thank you. That's huge. Thanks. Everybody give Jim a hand clap. That's big. Thank you, especially with the way YouTube's been messing with me again lately. That really means a lot. But why would the American Bar Association be so concerned about USAID and the funding being cut off to USAID? What do you think the reason is? Do you think that all of these NGOs, quite possibly, are filled with a bunch of lawyers? Do you think that might be possible? Look, we already know that a lot of these judges' spouses were working for these NGOs that had their money cut off. That was all exposed. Laura Loomer did a great job of exposing that. Okay. She might be a little crazy sometimes, but man, that girl does good work. I mean, she just constantly exposes this stuff. Okay. She's very valuable in that respect. On February 14th, the Federal Trade Commission Chair, Andrew N. Ferguson, I'll bring this back in for you. Okay. Federal Andrew N. Ferguson ordered his roster of political appointees not to renew memberships in the ABA, hold any ABA position, or attend any ABA events. This is big. So this is all taking place. This is all within the Trump administration, limiting the power and the scope of the ABA. Following a February 25th, 2025 memo revoking security clearances for the law firm that had assisted Special Counsel Jack Smith, Attorney General Pam Bondi sent a letter to ABA saying that the diversity requirements of Standard 206 of the Standard Rules and Procedure Approval Law School conflicts with Chief Justice John Roberts' 2023 decision that the affirmative action in college admissions is unconstitutional under the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. This is so beautiful because the way Pam Bondi worded that was now Judge Roberts, what's he going to do? Go make a decision that contradicts his earlier decision? She kind of boxed Roberts in, which you need to do with that guy because he's so pathetic. The ABA released a statement on March 3rd, 2025, encouraging members to challenge Trump's actions that undermine the courts and the legal profession, with more than 50 smaller bar associations joining the call for solidarity. While the ABA strongly condemned the Trump administration's actions, on March 25th, Reuters reported that President Donald Trump expanded his attacks on major U.S. law firms and issuing his fourth executive order targeting a law firm in 2 months. Folks, that's huge. Donald Trump has been taking this on. Pam Bondi is doing the work. So I just get tired of everybody running around going, Bondi sucks, Patel sucks, Bongino sucks. Just stop. And Bongino comes out the other day and says that basically he's reviewed the video and there was only one person in the area, and that was Jeffrey Epstein. Look, it may not be the news you believed. Certainly I believe Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself, and maybe still he didn't. But with the evidence that Dan Bongino has in front of him and what he's looking at, that's what he has to go on. Okay, so I don't believe Dan Bongino is lying for the deep state. Please stop with that kind of crap. Okay, it is undermining all the efforts and all the good. Mega has a problem. We have a problem where if somebody doesn't agree with what we think, if they don't agree with us 100% all the time, even if the facts are opposed to it, these people jump ship and go AWOL and go all nutso on people in the administration who Donald Trump has picked. He learned a lot from his first administration, and now he's doing a great job in his second administration. His appointments are much better. I had somebody share with me the other day something about Susie Wiles not allowing Elon Musk access. That was an article that the mainstream, lamestream media had done months ago to try and cause a rift between Trump and Musk when Musk was meeting with Trump all the time. Musk's work with the Department of Government Efficiency has been phenomenal. Okay. And now they're implementing those cuts through rescission. And I got to do another show on this. There's so much to learn right now. And I'm just diving more into the weeds. And hopefully you people like this content. It's a little different than what we've done for the past few months. I've tried to just kind of highlight stories where I see either wins or mocking the left, which I still think is important. Don't worry, I'll still do it. But I really think that we need to get educated on this because our people perish. It says, my people perish for a lack of knowledge in the Bible. So I really hope that you guys appreciate this content, but they are building cases, and you have to understand they're building cases to put forth in a corrupt court system. And people say, well, they arrested J6ers immediately. Yeah, because they had a corrupt DC court system that they could get their prosecutions rammed through with corrupt attorneys and so on. Okay. Now, I'm not saying this is why this move is so big. For Pam Bondi to take on the American Bar Association in such a bold manner, and for Donald Trump to do so as well. Please smash that like if you would, if you like this, and chat in because I'd love to see this stream get to over 2,000 people. I want to make sure I've acknowledged all the super chats. I just went to the start in my thing. Yes, I did. So, yeah, give them to at least September, folks. What do you want them to go out willy-nilly with cases that won't get prosecutions, just willy-nilly arrest people and then not have prosecutions to back them up? Is that what you want them to do? Yes or no? Seriously, give them time to build cases. Do you know most cases, like I've been watching cases that have been tied up in the courts for 6 frickin' years. 6 years. The wheels of justice turn slowly. They always have, typically, unless you can get corrupt DC courts with crazy prosecutors to come up with ridiculous charges like 1512C3 and ram them through and screw up people's lives. And now, since we have seen those people all get pardoned by Donald Trump, okay? So don't tell me things aren't happening. Don't, please. I just can't with that stuff. We actually need to support Trump's efforts. If you see him doing something egregiously wrong, I will hold the Constitution above the president every day. Okay, things like this, the Federalist Papers tell us a different story than what the media is spinning, where they're trying to tell us that rule of law, and they talk about the courts as the arbiter of all things true. That's not the case. It's not the case from our foundational writings. All executive power is vested in a president. Okay, they let the open border situation and the complete breaking of our laws occur for 4 years and tell us it was the rule of law. And now when we shut down the border and we try to ship illegals out of us, they quote to us the rule of law. This is nonsense. And that's why it's so important for us to learn this, because only with an engaged citizenry that actually understands this can we make our arguments successfully in the court of public opinion, which is huge. Anytime you get to 70%, folks, magic things happen. That's why Trump is able to deport these illegals in spite of the courts doing all their stupid stuff. The public knows. That's also why DEI is ending. That's why they are going after men and women's sports and so on. We have got to get to 70% on these issues in the court of public opinion. You can do that. That's your role. That's my role. That's why I do this, okay? Because we need to be able to educate people. Again, please go check out my sponsor, Birch Gold. Birch Gold, text Lumberjack to 989898 if you're interested in gold or silver. It's a free info kit, okay? And do check out mypillow.com/lumberjack. Mike Lindell is in the legal battle of his life. It starts on June 2nd. Again, I'm looking at flying out there to Colorado, okay? And getting some of that done. I'm just trying to work that out amongst my son's graduation and everything else. I did pull an elk tag for Colorado. New news for you. New news. I pulled an elk tag for Colorado. They went to no over-the-counter tags. And so I did pull I can't believe what happened this year, folks. I entered these drawings because you don't usually win them all. And I didn't get any tags in New Mexico, but I actually got both my tags in Colorado, both my tags in Montana, and both my tags in South Dakota. So now I have a problem. I have a lot of tags. So, but it'll be a lot of fun going hunting with my kids and all of that. So I just had to figure this out, but I didn't expect to win all those tags, but yet here I am. So thank you for those of you who must have prayed for me to get my tags. I don't know, but I'm going to be doing a lot. This is the best question of the day. Okay, folks, Lisa asked it. For those of you who know, George lives in Colorado. And my good friend George, you can follow him on X. I think it's at Bahizzy Tweets. My X handle, by the way, is at Neil E. Johnson. Some of my mods can post my X handle for you, so you can go over there. I have some good posts that I've done over there over the course of time. You can go check those out. Go check my pin post out. That's a good one. So George has said, he would go elk hunting, and now he's trying to get out of it. So you lovely people did this before, but you need to do it again You need to go to George's X account, comment on one of his last posts, and say, "Hey George, I know that Neil was on I was on Neil's show today. He pulled an elk tag for Colorado, so that must mean you're going elk hunting, right? Because you said you were going elk hunting with him. Something, whatever. Go give him some crap because we got to get him out in the woods." George says black people don't camp. He really told me that. I'm like, black people camp. I've got pictures of when I did my resorts books. They camp all the time, George. So, anyways, folks, keep fighting the good fight. Stay true to the cause because we are winning. It's beautiful to see. I know it's a tough slog. Okay, it is, and things aren't going as fast as we want them to. But give them time to build their cases. I think September is the time. I've talked to some other people who know law well, and they say, give them time to build their cases. If we're not seeing some actual prosecutions by September, then we might have a little bit more of an issue. But you got to give them time to get this done. Wouldn't you just love to see him pull a good enough case against Letitia James that she actually goes behind bars for what she has done to this country? How many of you would like to see Letitia James get prosecuted after what she did to Donald Trump and to us and to our country? Because that's the kind of stuff I'm looking for. So let justice roll forth like a river. Okay. So 1-800-586. Oh, 1-800. Is it? No, I'm forgetting the 1-800-568. That's it. 1-800-568-2865 to go get yourself Giza sheets, $49.98, folks. Any color, any size. You will never go back once you go to Giza sheets. You won't. It's not going to happen. I'm telling you, they're the best. The best. You can go buy those $600 sets of sheets, and they are not as good as Mike Lindell's sheets, and he's running $49.98 right now. It's like they're cotton, but they feel like silk. It is the wildest thing. Anyways, I love y'all. Keep fighting the good fight. Peace out. Wait, there it is. I lost my end stream button.